Hey, what's up guys? It's Mike from Job Ready English, here with just a little bit of a reflection on how difficult it is to get a good job. And you'll notice from the thumbnail I said, they lied! What do I really mean by that? Well, no one really explains how difficult it is to get a job. They're kind of like, well, do a CV and you just send loads and loads of CVs and you'll get a job. Probably, maybe not. So I want to share some of the things that I've learned because I've been doing this for 10 years. I've spoken to over 50,000 people, I reckon, whether that be on the phone, in groups, face to face, and I've probably helped well over 1,000 people get jobs. And just share some things that I've learned that I think will make this process easier for you, and also give you some ideas about numbers, statistics, because one of the things that's really frustrating if you're looking for a job and you're setting out on the journey, so if someone said to you, going to train for a marathon, you'll be like, when's the marathon? How long will it take for me to train for the marathon? How long do you have to run? How many times a week do you have to run? You'd have some kind of training program that you would use. But when it comes to getting a job, you're literally just sitting in front of your computer day after day, slowly losing the will to live. And also, most importantly, there's no effective feedback loop occurring. So companies very rarely are ever going to take the time to say, hey, random person who applied for my job, here's why you didn't get the job, because this is wrong with your CV or your cover letter or your interview or your assessment centre. And I'm aiming this not just at graduates but also professionals, because one thing I sort of found watching lots of different videos, and this was really inspired by some of the comments that I got from a video that I had last week, and people are like, your content's just truthful and useful, and we've gone through lots and lots of different content, is people don't really share their experiences. They just talk about random crap that you should do, but they don't really share, yeah, it's really hard and this is kind of what you're looking for. So the experience that I wanted to share with you was, I've worked with one-to-one clients for 10 years. I don't do it that much these days. You could, if you went to jobreadyenglish.com and submitted a form, then you can work for me. It costs a lot of money. Not for me, with me. One-to-one costs a lot of money, but if you want to do that, that's cool. So I've probably worked with, I would say, 600 clients one-to-one, something like that. There used to be a time when I used to work with a ton of clients. At Job Ready English, I've not worked with loads, so about 2-3 years, I might work with 10 or 20 clients one-to-one every year. To be honest, you know, now it's just very straightforward and can be a little bit boring at times. So the first thing to recognize is your CV is the first place to start, and you definitely want to use some kind of keyword matching software like JobScan. There's loads of other stuff out there. I'm not particularly saying that you have to use JobScan. I use JobScan. It's a little bit more expensive. I think it's like $30 a month, because you need to be sending a CV that matches a job description. So one of the most basic mistakes that people make is that they sit there on Indeed and LinkedIn and they apply for hundreds of jobs. And basically what they do is that they look busy because their partner, their mum, their dad, their brother, their sister, their friends are going to come home and be like, hey Steve, what have you done all today, you lazy good-for-nothing SOB, while I've been out at work or studying or whatever. They may not say that, but you probably feel like that, right? Because I've had periods when I've been unemployed, I've been on benefits before, and I just basically feel like I'm a lazy good-for-nothing that doesn't do anything. And whenever people ask me about finding a job, I'm a bit like, ugh, like I've been turned inside out. And I feel like they're saying to me, you're good for nothing. Why haven't you got a job? What is wrong with you? So that's essentially the feeling that underlines what most people come to me with. They're like, I really, like, what's wrong with me? I don't understand why I can't get a job. So tailoring your CV really matters. And if you look for like CV Job Ready English, I'll show you how to do that. It's free in a video. Definitely learn how to do stuff. The next thing to think about is, he who tries to do everything will probably end up failing at most things, right? So if you've got a target, be really specific. Make sure that you do an application plan. So 95% of the time when people apply to work with me, or have done in the past, I'll say, cool, what companies have you applied for? And they're like, I don't really know. Like, I applied for like JP Morgan, and I think I applied here. And I'm like, so you don't really know what you've done. You can't really track the work that you've done. You've not put any planning or thought into it. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm not blaming you. I'm not calling you like stupid, because if you didn't know, then you didn't know. But if you're watching this, then you should track what you're doing. And there are really two reasons. Number one, when you get to that time when you can look for jobs, you know what to do. So you've made this list of companies, list of roles, and you can just get started straight away. Number two, you can figure out what works and what doesn't work. So say, for example, you changed your CV and then you start to get more replies, or you change the job that you're applying to and you start to get more replies, or old replies come back. It's really difficult to track what's going on. I certainly couldn't do it. And on average, the clients that I work with, they'll apply for like 30, 40 or 50 jobs. So even though people will pay me a lot of money to work with me one-to-one, they're not applying for less jobs than you. They're just more consistent, and the level of applications is of a higher quality. Which kind of leads me to my next point. Make sure you put the effort in with your cover letters, make sure you put the effort in with your application answers, make sure that they're checked, that they're optimized for keywords. Most of the information that you need up until assessment center is contained within the job description. So a company has already said, this is the ideal candidate that I'm looking for. Bearing in mind, a lot of job descriptions are pie in the sky. So if somebody sat down and said, what's the ideal person that you'd need? And then I list out 27 different things that I want them to do. Now the chances are very unlikely I'm going to find someone who does all 27 of those things. I mean, if they do half of those things, that's good enough. And probably the top 3 or 4 things are the things that I really need. They're going to spend 80% of their time doing. And the rest is like, well, there's this 20% of other stuff that we also do. That's kind of useful, so we should write that down. So sometimes when people look at job descriptions like, this is completely mental. Why have they written all this stuff down? It's just like a wish list, like a dream candidate, right? But you can be sure that if you're applying for a job and you don't know the job description, you basically might not as well apply at all, which kind of goes back to my original thoughts around what we do with clients. So you'd be surprised, the clients that I work with one-to-one, they apply for like 3 to 5 jobs a week. It's not a lot, is it? Right, if you're sitting there and you're doing Indeed or LinkedIn one-click apply, you're probably applying for hundreds of jobs a week. Now there's a reason why they are getting better results than you. Because if you're just completely random, and if you're doing something which is easy for everyone else, you're not going to win. Because if it's easy for you, it's easy for everyone else. And if it's easy for everyone else, it's hard for you. Here's why. So if you're one-click applying for jobs and everyone else is one-click applying, unless you're applying for that job as soon as it comes out, and you're like the first 10 applicants of the job, you've basically got no chance of getting that job through Indeed or LinkedIn. Because I know as an employer and as somebody who's employed for different roles, I'm not looking at your application if you're the 250th person to apply. So basically, the longer that role has been available for, the less likely that you are to get it. Which brings me to another point. Try to apply to jobs that are as recent as possible, like preferably today, ideally within a week, at best within a month. If it's for a big company or it's a big graduate position or something like that. But anything older from a month, just don't bother. I mean, to be honest with you, I probably wouldn't be bothering if it was older than 14 days. Because the chances are, if somebody's looking for somebody to work at that company, they really want them to start now. Even for graduate roles, they want to get the graduate schemes filled in as soon as possible. They're not sitting there twiddling their thumbs thinking, well, I'm gonna wait for Susan to apply, but she won't apply for 3 months because that's when the deadline is. By the time you apply and it's the deadline, those roles have been filled months ago. Like, you're getting there way too late for the party. You want to get there as soon as possible. And you can use some cool things, like you can use Google Alerts, you can use Indeed Alerts, but I would make sure that you apply for the company directly. So go to the company's website, because you're cutting out a level of screening. If PwC advertise a job through Indeed and you apply through Indeed, you get screened by Indeed, then you get screened by PwC. But if you apply directly to PwC, you just get screened by PwC. Does that make sense? And there could be different criteria for screening, but you want to minimize that process as much as possible. The other thing that kind of tends to come up is I always think online tests and interviews really go hand in hand. So people will find online tests difficult and they'll find interviews difficult. You know, interviews is really where we've sold a lot of courses. So we've sold a lot of courses based around interviews and particular companies' interview processes. But realistically, both of these things are really quite simple, which is the more that you practice, the more that you prepare, the better that you will be. So very often when someone comes and talks to me and says, I'm really bad at online tests, and I'm like, cool, how many online tests have you done? And they go, 3. And I say, well, that's not enough, you need to do more. And specifically, I would recommend a paid online test provider rather than a free one. Number one, because you're going to need to practice a lot of online tests, probably 30, 40 or more. If you're practicing SJT, numerical and logical, you're going to need to do 20, 30 of them. If you're practicing for an interview, then you're going to need to do, you know, 5 or 10 repetitions for each question. Now, doing that in a day or in a week is really unlikely, which is why having a plan of attack, knowing what you're doing, and understanding that finding a job, the whole process, can take 3 to 6 months. It's quite a long process. And I wanted to point that out because a lot of people feel like, well, if I start looking for a job today, then I'll have a job by next week. That's not how it works. Bare minimum is probably going to take you at least 30 to 60 days. Even if, particularly for a bigger company, even if their process is really quick and you're super lucky, you're going to spend quite a lot of time waiting for an assessment centre, waiting for a final interview. There's lots of time spent waiting for stuff and applying for things. And that's why finding a job is so hard. It's not particularly that the quality of the standard is higher or the competition is better, because I've worked with lots of people who weren't that bright. They weren't that bright, they weren't that talented, they weren't that much different from you. You're probably really bright, talented and ambitious, but they did the right things for the right number of repetitions for the right number of time. Because the final thing that I kind of want to leave you with, or the final 2 things to leave you with, something to think about is, you know, if what you're doing isn't working, change. Change what you're doing. So when someone turns around and says, I've been applying for a job for 3 months and I haven't had any success. Well, dude, I mean, then stop doing that. That obviously doesn't work. Something in your process is broken. You know, if you're applying for a week, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and you're getting no responses, it's time to go back to the drawing board and to try to figure out, you know, sort of what's happening. And the final thing is, it's not about you. It's not about you being a bad candidate, a bad person. You're not stupid. There's nothing wrong with you. It's really easy to internalize that stuff, and I've been there. You know, I can remember applying for like bog standard service jobs, right? And just not even getting an interview and thinking, come on, man, like what's wrong with me? But really, I'm not understanding the market properly. I'm not tailoring my CV and my cover letter to the job description. I'm not taking the time to really investigate what the job is all about. So of course I'm going to fail, because I'm basically just throwing darts in the dark and hoping that something hits. And then I'm surprised and outraged when I don't get the job. So, you know, those are some things that I just wanted to share, which is my experience of working with clients, and a lot of stuff that basically, what do I mean when they lied? I just mean they didn't tell you. They don't tell you this stuff. A university won't tell you, a careers counsellor probably won't tell you, your parents probably won't tell you. They'll tell you it's difficult, but no one really tells you what to do. And I think that that was just an interesting insight that I wanted to share based upon recent conversations and comments that I've had. And I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, put a thumbs up. If you want more videos like this, then let me know, because there's lots that I can talk about and just be super honest with you about. And if you want to know more, then let me know what you'd like me to talk about next in the comments below. See you later.